You think Viking longships were just crude wooden boats filled with bloodthirsty warriors. What you're about to discover will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about these remarkable vessels and the sophisticated maritime civilization that created them. The truth is, these weren't primitive raiders sailing aimlessly across dark waters. Viking longships were engineering marvels that enabled one of history's most successful trading networks, spanning from Greenland to Constantinople. These vessels could navigate both open oceans and rivers just 18 inches deep, carry crews of up to 100 men for months at a time, and were so perfectly designed that their basic principles influenced shipbuilding for centuries. Consider this shocking fact. While most of Europe was struggling with overland travel on muddy roads, Vikings were operating a maritime highway system that connected 4 continents. A single longship could travel from Norway to the Mediterranean in just 6 weeks, faster than any land-based journey of the time. They reached North America 500 years before Columbus, established trade routes that stretched to the Caspian Sea, and created floating communities that functioned as mobile cities. Here's what will truly astound you. The construction of a single longship required 27,000 man-hours of skilled labor. Master shipbuilders spent years learning techniques, passed down through generations, creating vessels so flexible they could bend with ocean swells without breaking, yet strong enough to be hauled overland between rivers. The largest longships, called drakars, were over 120 feet long and could carry entire armies along with their horses, supplies, and siege equipment. But perhaps most surprising of all is what happened inside these vessels during their voyages. Far from being cramped torture chambers, longships became floating workshops, schools, and cultural centers. Viking crews included not just warriors, but skilled craftsmen, poets, navigators, and traders. They carried portable forges for metalwork, looms for weaving, and even small livestock. These ships were self-sufficient communities that could operate independently for months, creating some of history's most remarkable examples of human cooperation and survival. Whether you're listening from New York or London, Tokyo, or Sydney, you're about to discover a world that challenges everything you thought you knew about medieval life. Before we dive into this hidden world, please hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Your journey into the past helps us understand just how sophisticated and innovative our ancestors truly were. This is the story about what really happened inside Viking longships, and how these remarkable vessels became the foundation of one of history's most successful maritime civilizations. The year is 982, and you're standing on the rocky shore of western Norway as autumn storms begin to gather. The harvest has been poor, and whispers of famine drift through your village like smoke from dying fires. Your chieftain has made a decision that will change everything. It's time to seek new lands across the Western Sea, following rumors of green shores where no man has claimed dominion. Behind you, the sounds of preparation echo across the settlement. For weeks, families have been gathering everything they'll need for a journey into the unknown. Not just weapons and tools, but livestock, seeds, looms, and the precious possessions that make a place feel like home. This isn't a raid, it's an exodus, and the longship pulled up on the beach before you will be your world for the next several months. The vessel stretches nearly 80 feet along the shoreline, its graceful curves rising from the water like the backbone of some magnificent sea creature. Even here on land, you can sense its eagerness to return to the waves. The morning mist clings to its clinker-built hull, each overlapping plank fitted so perfectly that you can barely see the seams. The ship's dragon head rears proudly at the prow, its carved features seeming to scan the horizon for the adventures that await. You breathe deeply, tasting salt and pine pitch on the cold air. Somewhere beyond that grey horizon lies your future. New lands, new possibilities, new challenges that will test everything you've learned about survival and community. The longship bobs gently in the shallow water, and you know that once you step aboard, your old life will be left behind on this rocky shore forever. The moment you step onto the longship's deck, your senses are overwhelmed by the intimate reality of your new floating home. The first thing that strikes you is how narrow the vessel feels. Barely 9 feet wide, with every inch of space carefully planned and utilized. The deck planks, worn smooth by countless feet, flex slightly under your weight. And you realize that this isn't rigidity, but intentional flexibility that allows the ship to bend with the waves rather than break against them. Your eyes adjust to the organized chaos of departure. Along both sides of the ship, circular shields hang in overlapping rows, their painted surfaces creating a colorful barrier that also serves as the ship's defensive wall. Between each shield, an oar slot awaits its long wooden blade. The oars themselves, each nearly 20 feet long, are secured along the center line, their polished surfaces gleaming with linseed oil. The smell hits you next. A complex mixture of pine tar, wet wool, leather, and something distinctly human. It's not unpleasant, but it's immediately obvious that this will be a world of close quarters and shared air. Near the stern, smoke rises from a small iron brazier set in a bed of stones, where someone is preparing the morning meal. The scent of cooking porridge mingles with the ever-present smell of the sea. What surprises you most is the absence of traditional benches. Instead, sturdy wooden chests line both sides of the ship, each one serving as both storage and seating. These sea chests contain everything their owners need for the voyage: extra clothing, tools, personal treasures, and food supplies. The efficiency is remarkable. Every piece of furniture serves multiple purposes. Every item has its designated place. Above you, the mast rises like a tree trunk, its square woolen sail currently furled and secured. The rigging creates a complex web of ropes and pulleys, each line serving a specific purpose in the dance of wind and canvas that will carry you across the ocean. Even at rest, the ship seems to pulse with potential energy, ready to spring into motion at a moment's notice. As you settle onto one of the sea chests, you realize that this vessel isn't just a means of transportation. It's a complete world unto itself, carefully designed to sustain human life in the vast emptiness of the ocean. Every detail, from the way the shields are mounted to the placement of the cook fire, reflects generations of hard-won knowledge about survival at sea. The first person you meet is Astrid, a middle-aged woman whose weathered hands speak of decades spent working with wool and loom. She sits near the stern, her fingers never idle as she spins thread from a bundle of raw fleece. Her presence immediately challenges any notion that these voyages were purely masculine endeavors. Astrid's husband died 3 summers ago, but her skills as a weaver and her knowledge of textile production make her invaluable to the expedition. The trick, she explains, her voice carrying the authority of experience, is to keep your hands busy. The sea has its own rhythm, and if you fight it, you'll go mad. But if you work with it, even the roughest crossing becomes bearable. She gestures toward a small loom secured against the ship's side, its frame padded with sheepskin to prevent damage from the constant motion. Astrid's story unfolds gradually over the days at sea. Her late husband was a master metalworker who created some of the finest sword blades in their region. After his death, she could have remarried quickly. Skilled metalworkers' widows were valuable matches. Instead, she chose to maintain his workshop, learning the secrets of iron and fire that had previously been his alone. The tools in her sea chest include not just weaving equipment, but also small hammers and tongs for delicate metalwork. She plans to establish both a textile and metalworking operation in the new land, combining skills that will make her one of the most valuable settlers. Her loom tells its own story of adaptation. The frame can be quickly disassembled when storms threaten, its parts fitting together with mortise and tenon joints that require no nails or bindings. The warping board folds flat against the ship's side, and the heddles are woven from horsehair rather than wood, making them lighter and more flexible. Every aspect of her equipment has been modified for shipboard use, representing decades of accumulated knowledge about textile production at sea. Near the bow, you encounter Bjorn, barely 16, but already marked by the confidence of someone who's found his place in the world. His job is to maintain the ship's rigging, a responsibility that requires him to climb the mast in all weather and understand the subtle ways that wind and rope interact. His sea chest contains an impressive collection of tools: knives for cutting rope, needles for splicing, and small weights for testing the tension of critical lines. "My father taught me to read the wind," he says, his young face serious as he adjusts a stay line. Not just its direction, but its mood. You can tell by the way it moves through the rigging whether it's going to hold steady or shift. The ship talks to you, if you know how to listen. Bjorn's expertise extends beyond simple rope work. He understands the complex mathematics of wind pressure and sail area, knowledge passed down through generations of Norse seafarers. He can calculate how much sail the ship can carry in different wind conditions, when to reef the sail to prevent damage, and how to adjust the rigging to maximize speed while maintaining safety. His tools include a small bone ruler marked with measurements that correspond to different rope tensions, a device that allows him to standardize the ship's rigging according to proven formulas. The young man's sea chest also contains materials for emergency repairs that could mean the difference between life and death. Oakum made from old rope, ready to be stuffed into hull breeches. Pine pitch for waterproofing, strips of leather for temporary bindings, even a small selection of wooden pegs in different sizes, each one carved to fit specific joints in the ship's construction. This mobile repair kit represents the accumulated wisdom of generations of seafarers who learned through bitter experience what failures were most likely and how to address them quickly. The most surprising crew member is Eric, a man in his 50s whose gentle manner and ink-stained fingers identify him as a skald, a keeper of stories and laws. In a world without written records, Eric carries the community's collective memory in his mind. He knows the genealogies that establish land rights, the legal precedents that settle disputes, and the stories that define what it means to be part of this culture. During the long hours of sailing, Eric becomes the ship's entertainment center. His voice carries across the water as he recites epic poems, his words painting pictures of heroes and distant lands. But he's more than just a storyteller. He's a living library, able to recall complex legal decisions and settle arguments with quotations from ancient wisdom. Eric's repertoire includes technical knowledge that proves invaluable during the voyage. He knows the traditional formulas for calculating distances based on the flight patterns of different birds. He can recite the characteristics of various types of seaweed and their significance for navigation. His memory contains detailed descriptions of landmarks along coastlines he's never personally visited, information gathered from other travelers and preserved in verse form for easy memorization. The Skald's method of storing information reveals the sophistication of oral tradition. Complex legal codes are embedded in alliterative verses that make them easier to remember accurately. Technical knowledge about shipbuilding, metalworking, and agriculture is preserved in story form, with practical information woven into entertaining narratives. Eric's mind contains what amounts to a complete encyclopedia of Norse culture, all organized according to mnemonic principles that ensure accurate transmission across generations. You also meet Ingrid, a young woman whose pregnancy is just beginning to show. She's traveling with her husband Magnus to establish a new farm in the Promised Land, carrying within her body the future of the settlement. Her presence adds a different dimension to the voyage, reminding everyone that this journey isn't just about conquest or adventure. It's about the continuation of families and the establishment of new communities. Ingrid's preparation for the voyage reveals the sophisticated planning that goes into such expeditions. Her sea chest contains not just personal items, but carefully selected seeds that will form the foundation of agriculture in the new land. Barley and oats that will grow in cold climates. Turnips and cabbages that can survive frost. Herbs for cooking and medicine that will be essential for maintaining health in an environment without established trade networks. She also carries the tools and knowledge necessary for establishing domestic life in a wilderness setting. Clay pots wrapped in wool for protection, but also the knowledge of local clay sources and firing techniques that will allow her to create new pottery when these vessels eventually break. Spindles and knitting needles, but also the understanding of plant fibers that might substitute for wool if their livestock don't survive the crossing. Her pregnancy adds complexity to every aspect of the voyage. The crew has modified one of the sea chests to create a more comfortable sleeping space, padding it with extra furs and securing it against the ship's motion. Her husband Magnus has positioned himself as her constant protector, but the entire crew shares responsibility for her welfare. The ship's limited medical supplies include herbs specifically chosen for complications of pregnancy and childbirth, knowledge that Eric carries in his vast repertoire of traditional remedies. You meet Gunnar, the ship's master carpenter, whose skills extend far beyond simple woodworking. His sea chest contains a complete set of specialized tools, each one designed for specific tasks related to ship maintenance. Adzes for shaping planks, augers for drilling precise holes, spokeshaves for creating the curved surfaces that give the ship its distinctive lines. But more importantly, he carries the knowledge of wood behavior that makes the longship possible. Gunnar can identify different types of wood by smell, grain pattern, and the sound they make when struck. He understands which woods are best for different parts of the ship. Oak for the keel and main planks, pine for the mast and yards, ash for the oars. His expertise includes not just the selection of materials, but the timing of their harvest, the techniques for seasoning and preparation, and the joinery methods that create strong, flexible connections. Sven serves as the ship's metalworker, responsible not just for weapons maintenance, but for all the iron components that hold the vessel together. His portable forge, secured in the ship's stern, can be set up quickly when repairs are needed. His coal, stored in leather bags to keep it dry, burns hot enough to work iron even in the damp conditions of ocean travel. His hammer rings against his anvil as he creates nails, reinforces damaged fittings, and maintains the tools that keep the ship operational. These aren't the savage raiders of popular imagination. They're farmers, craftspeople, parents, and elders, a complete cross-section of medieval society embarking on one of history's most ambitious colonization efforts. Their faces reflect not bloodlust, but the complex mixture of hope, fear, and determination that drives all human migration. Each person aboard represents not just individual skills, but entire knowledge systems that will be essential for establishing civilization in a new land. The daily rhythm of life aboard the longship reveals itself as a carefully orchestrated system of shared responsibility and mutual dependence. You wake before dawn to the sound of Astrid stirring the embers in the brazier, her movements deliberate and quiet in the grey light. The ship never truly sleeps. Someone is always on watch, monitoring the wind, the stars, and the subtle changes in the vessel's movement that might signal danger or opportunity. The morning ritual begins with checking the ship's condition. Bjorn climbs the mast to inspect the rigging for chafing or looseness that developed during the night. Magnus examines the steering oar for any damage or wear. Gunnar checks the hull for new leaks, running his hands along the interior planking to feel for dampness that might indicate a problem. These inspections are crucial. Small problems discovered early can be fixed easily, while the same issues left unaddressed could become life-threatening emergencies. The morning meal is a communal affair centered around the cook fire. The menu is practical rather than elaborate. Porridge made from barley or oats, supplemented by dried fish, cheese, and the occasional egg from the chickens kept in wooden cages near the stern. Everyone contributes something to the common pot, and the portions are carefully divided to ensure the food supplies last for the entire journey. Water management becomes a critical daily concern. The ship carries fresh water in wooden barrels, but these supplies must be carefully rationed. Each person receives a measured portion for drinking, with additional water available for cooking and essential cleaning. The crew collects rainwater when possible, stretching canvas sheets to funnel precipitation into containers. They also know techniques for extracting moisture from fog, and even for distilling small amounts of fresh water from seawater using heated stones and condensation. What strikes you most forcefully is how the ship's narrow confines create an intimacy that would be impossible on land. Privacy is a luxury that simply doesn't exist. You sleep pressed against your companions, sharing warmth and breath. You eat from common bowls, work side by side on tasks that require multiple hands, and learn to coordinate your movements with the ship's motion as if you were all part of a single organism. The work schedule rotates throughout the day, with different crew members taking responsibility for various tasks. The strongest rowers work in shifts, ensuring that human power is always available when wind fails or when maneuvering in tight quarters requires precise control. The watches are divided into periods that allow everyone adequate rest, while maintaining constant vigilance for changes in weather, obstacles in the water, or signs of land. The economic reality of the voyage is equally fascinating. This isn't just a ship, it's a floating business venture. The cargo hold contains trade goods carefully selected for their value in distant markets. Amber from the Baltic shores, furs from the northern forests, iron tools forged in Norwegian workshops. Every member of the crew has invested something in this venture, whether labor, materials, or expertise. But the ship also functions as a mobile workshop. During calm weather, you watch the crew engage in productive activities that would be impossible in a simple raiding vessel. Sven tends his forge, creating nails and hardware that will be essential for construction in the new land. Astrid works her loom, creating cloth that will be both used aboard the ship and traded at distant markets. Even Bjorn, when not tending the rigging, carves bone needles and wooden tools that will be essential for establishing a new settlement. The ship's economy operates on principles of shared investment and collective benefit. Profits from trade will be divided according to each person's contribution to the venture. But immediate needs are met through cooperation rather than individual competition. Food is shared equally regardless of personal wealth. Work assignments are based on skill and necessity rather than social status. This cooperative economics proves essential for survival in the dangerous environment of ocean travel. The organization of work reveals sophisticated understanding of human psychology and group dynamics. Tasks are rotated to prevent boredom and ensure that everyone develops multiple skills. The most dangerous or unpleasant jobs are shared equally among crew members, rather than assigned permanently to individuals of lower status. This system maintains morale while ensuring that essential work gets done, regardless of casualties or illness. The brutal reality of medieval life becomes apparent during storms. When the wind rises and the waves begin to tower above the ship's sides, all the comfortable routines dissolve into desperate cooperation. You find yourself hauling on ropes with burning hands, your feet sliding on wet deck planks, your world reduced to the next wave and the next command shouted over the roar of wind and water. Storm survival requires precise coordination and absolute trust. The crew must work together to reduce sail area at exactly the right moment. Too early, and the ship loses the power needed to ride over the waves. Too late, and the sail tears or the mast breaks under excessive pressure. Everyone must know their role in these emergency procedures, because there's no time for hesitation or confusion when the ship's survival hangs in the balance. Seasickness is a constant companion for many crew members, but there's no time for sympathy. The ship's survival depends on everyone doing their part, regardless of how they feel. You learn to work through nausea, to find your balance even when the deck tilts at impossible angles, to trust your life to the skill and dedication of people who were strangers just days ago. The ship's response to storms reveals the genius of its design. Rather than fighting the waves, the flexible hull rides with them, bending and twisting in ways that would destroy a more rigid vessel. The crew learns to work with this motion, timing their actions to the ship's rhythm and using the vessel's movement to assist in handling sails and steering. Recovery from storms brings its own challenges. Equipment damaged during the emergency must be repaired quickly before the next weather system arrives. Injuries sustained during the storm must be treated with limited medical supplies. The crew's morale must be restored. through successful completion of necessary repairs and return to normal routines. These post-storm periods often reveal the true character of individuals and the strength of the group's social bonds. The psychological impact of surviving storms together creates deep bonds among crew members. Shared danger and mutual dependence forge relationships that extend far beyond the voyage itself. These connections become the foundation for cooperation in establishing new settlements, creating networks of mutual support that span continents and generations. The longship reveals its hidden complexities as you settle into the rhythm of ocean travel. Beneath the surface of apparent simplicity lies a sophisticated understanding of human psychology and group dynamics. The ship's design forces cooperation. No one can succeed alone. An individual failure threatens everyone's survival. You begin to understand why certain crew members hold positions of special authority. The steersman, who controls the ship's direction with the large steering oar, must possess not just physical strength, but an intuitive understanding of wind, current, and the ship's personality. His decisions affect everyone's fate, and his position carries enormous responsibility. Magnus, who serves as steersman on this voyage, earned his position through years of experience that taught him to read the subtle signs of changing weather and ocean conditions. Magnus explains that steering a longship requires understanding the vessel's unique characteristics. Each ship has its own personality. Some respond quickly to the steering oar, others turn slowly, but hold their course steadily. The steersman must learn these traits and adapt his technique accordingly. He must also coordinate with the sail handlers, timing course changes to work with wind shifts rather than fighting against them. The ship's social hierarchy becomes apparent during mealtimes and rest periods. Age and experience command respect, but so does skill and reliability. You watch as disputes are settled not by violence, but by appeal to custom and precedent. Eric's knowledge of law and tradition makes him an informal judge, while Astrid's practical wisdom carries weight in decisions about rationing and daily routines. The development of this social order reveals sophisticated understanding of group psychology. Leadership roles are distributed among multiple individuals rather than concentrated in a single commander. This system prevents the disasters that could result from the death or incapacitation of a single leader, while also ensuring that decisions benefit from multiple perspectives and areas of expertise. What emerges is a complex picture of medieval society that contradicts modern assumptions about primitive brutality. These people have developed sophisticated systems for managing conflict, sharing resources, and maintaining morale during extended periods of stress and uncertainty. The longship becomes a laboratory for human cooperation, a place where survival depends on the ability to work together despite differences in background, temperament, and personal ambition. The ship's justice system operates according to principles that balance individual rights with collective needs. Minor disputes are resolved through discussion and compromise, with experienced crew members serving as mediators. More serious conflicts require formal proceedings, where evidence is presented and judgment rendered according to traditional law. These procedures maintain social order while ensuring that decisions are perceived as fair and legitimate. The darker aspects of this maritime life also become apparent. Disease spreads quickly in the confined space, and you witness the heartbreaking reality of losing crew members to fever or infection. The dead must be committed to the sea with ceremony, but without delay. their personal possessions distributed among the survivors according to established customs. When Olaf, one of the younger crew members, develops a severe fever 3 weeks into the voyage, the ship becomes a floating medical ward. Ingrid, despite her pregnancy, takes charge of his care, using knowledge passed down from her grandmother about treating fevers with willow bark tea and cool compresses. The entire crew participates in his care, adjusting work schedules to allow for constant nursing and modifying the ship's routine to provide the quiet he needs for recovery. The medical knowledge carried aboard the ship represents centuries of accumulated experience with treating injuries and illnesses in environments where professional healers are unavailable. The crew knows which herbs stop bleeding, which treatments reduce fever, and how to set broken bones using materials available on shipboard. This knowledge often makes the difference between life and death during extended voyages. Violence, when it occurs, is swift and decisive. Disputes that might smolder for years on land must be resolved quickly aboard ship, where ongoing conflict could threaten everyone's survival. You see the darker side of Viking justice, harsh punishments for theft or cowardice, the brutal efficiency of a society that cannot afford to tolerate antisocial behavior. Yet even in these harsh realities, you observe the resilience of human community. The crew develops its own songs and stories, its own jokes and traditions. Small kindnesses become magnified in importance, sharing a dry cloak, offering a word of encouragement, helping a sick companion through a difficult night. The ship becomes a microcosm of human society, complete with its potential for both cruelty and compassion. The psychological challenges of ocean travel reveal themselves gradually. The vast emptiness of the sea, the constant motion of the ship, and the uncertainty about the future combine to create stresses that test even the strongest personalities. Some crew members withdraw into themselves, speaking little and focusing intensely on their work. Others become more social, seeking constant interaction and conversation to ward off the anxiety of isolation. The ship's response to these psychological pressures demonstrates sophisticated understanding of human nature. Work assignments are designed to keep everyone occupied and engaged. Storytelling sessions provide intellectual stimulation and emotional release. Even simple games using dice or carved pieces help maintain mental health during the most stressful periods of the voyage. The development of shipboard culture creates new traditions and practices that blend elements from different backgrounds. The crew includes people from various regions of Scandinavia, each bringing their own customs and knowledge. The confined environment of the ship forces these different traditions to merge and adapt, creating new forms of music, storytelling, and social interaction that reflect the unique conditions of maritime life. The longship operates within a vast network of economic and social connections that span continents. As you learn more about your destination, you realize that this voyage is part of a larger system of trade, communication, and cultural exchange that links Scandinavia to the rest of the medieval world. The amber in the cargo hold will find its way to markets in Constantinople, where it will be traded for silk and spices that originated in distant China. The iron tools forged in Norwegian workshops will equip settlements in Iceland and Greenland, enabling the expansion of Norse civilization into the North Atlantic. The information gathered during this voyage, knowledge of currents, winds, and navigation, will be shared with other crews, gradually building a collective understanding of the world's geography. You begin to appreciate the sophistication of Viking maritime technology. The ship's design represents centuries of accumulated knowledge about wind patterns, ocean currents, and the behavior of different types of wood under stress. Every aspect of the vessel, from the shape of its hull to the weave of its sail, reflects practical solutions to complex problems of ocean travel. The crew's navigational skills are particularly impressive. Without compass or charts, they navigate by observing the color of the water, the flight patterns of birds, and the subtle changes in wave formation that indicate the presence of distant land. They carry ravens in cages, releasing them to observe their flight direction when approaching unknown shores. These techniques, developed through generations of trial and error, enable them to cross vast expanses of open ocean with remarkable accuracy. The longship also serves as a conduit for cultural exchange. As you sail, you hear stories of distant lands and exotic peoples, tales brought back by previous expeditions and now part of the collective knowledge of Nordic civilization. These stories shape expectations and influence decisions, creating a mental map of the world that extends far beyond the shores of Scandinavia. The ship becomes a vessel for transmitting not just goods, but ideas, technologies, and cultural practices. The crew members carry with them the skills and knowledge that will be essential for establishing new settlements. But they also bring openness to learning from the peoples they encounter. This combination of cultural confidence and adaptability helps explain the success of Viking expansion across such diverse environments. As the longship carries you across the vast Atlantic, it becomes clear that this vessel is more than just a means of transportation. It's a repository of cultural memory and intellectual achievement. The stories told during the long evening hours preserve not just entertainment, but essential knowledge about navigation, weather prediction, and survival techniques. Eric's repertoire includes more than heroic tales. He knows the genealogies that establish land rights, the legal precedents that govern disputes, and the technical knowledge required for shipbuilding and metalworking. His memory serves as the community's library, storing information that would otherwise be lost in a culture without widespread literacy. The ship's design itself represents a form of accumulated knowledge. The specific curves of the hull, the placement of the mast, the configuration of the rigging, all these details have been refined through generations of experimentation and experience. The master shipbuilders who created this vessel were part of an intellectual tradition that valued innovation within the framework of proven principles. You observe how the crew adapts existing technologies to new challenges. When the ship's rigging needs repair, they improvise solutions using materials at hand, applying principles learned in different contexts to solve immediate problems. This flexibility and creativity, combined with deep respect for traditional knowledge, creates a culture that is both conservative and innovative. The longship also serves as a platform for technological development. The crew tests new techniques for sail management, experiments with different approaches to cargo storage, and develops improved methods for navigation and weather prediction. Each voyage becomes a laboratory for maritime innovation, contributing to the gradual evolution of Viking shipbuilding and seamanship. The artistic and literary traditions carried aboard the ship reflect a sophisticated appreciation for beauty and meaning that contradicts stereotypes about Viking barbarism. The ship's decorative elements, the carved dragon head, the painted shields, the intricate metalwork on weapons and tools, represent a culture that values aesthetic achievement alongside practical efficiency. The rhythms of maritime life aboard the longship are shaped by forces beyond human control. The changing seasons, the cycles of weather, and the demands of religious and cultural observance. As you sail through the autumn months, you experience how these external patterns influence daily life aboard the vessel. The approach of winter brings both urgency and opportunity. The crew knows that soon the North Atlantic will become too dangerous for safe travel, so there's pressure to reach the new land before the storms of winter make sailing impossible. Yet winter also represents a time of rest and reflection, when the community can focus on storytelling, craftsmanship, and the planning of future endeavors. Religious observances provide structure and meaning to the voyage. The crew marks the phases of the moon with ceremonies that honor the gods of sea and wind. These rituals serve both spiritual and practical purposes, reinforcing group unity while providing opportunities to assess the ship's condition and the crew's morale. The longship's interaction with seasonal weather patterns reveals the sophistication of Viking meteorology. The crew can predict changes in weather by observing cloud formations, wind patterns, and the behavior of seabirds. They know which winds are likely to be sustained and which will shift, knowledge that enables them to plan sailing strategies days in advance. Political developments in distant lands also influence life aboard the ship. News of conflicts between kings, changes in trade relationships, and shifts in political alliances travels along the maritime networks that connect Viking settlements. This information affects decisions about where to seek trade opportunities and where to avoid potential conflicts. The legal complexities of medieval life follow the crew even onto the open ocean. Disputes about property rights, inheritance claims, and commercial agreements must be resolved according to established legal traditions. Eric's knowledge of law becomes essential, not just for maintaining order aboard the ship, but for ensuring that the crew's actions will be recognized as legitimate when they reach their destination. The changing light of autumn days affects the ship's daily rhythms. As the days grow shorter, the crew adjusts their schedule to make maximum use of available daylight. Work that requires good visibility is concentrated in the middle of the day, while evening hours are devoted to activities that can be performed by firelight: storytelling, tool maintenance, and food preparation. The people who make the longship's voyages possible represent a complex web of relationships, skills, and responsibilities that extend far beyond the crew members visible on deck. Behind every successful voyage lies the work of countless individuals whose contributions are essential, but often invisible. The master shipbuilders who created the vessel spent years learning their craft, studying the properties of different types of wood, mastering the techniques of clinker construction, and developing the intuitive understanding of hydrodynamics that makes the longship possible. Their knowledge is passed down through apprenticeships that begin in childhood and continue through decades of practical experience. The families of crew members play crucial roles in preparing for and supporting the voyage. Wives and mothers spend months preparing the food supplies, clothing, and equipment that will sustain the crew during their time at sea. They also maintain the farms and workshops that provide the economic foundation for these maritime ventures. The political leaders who organize and finance the expeditions must balance competing interests and coordinate complex logistics. They negotiate with other chieftains for crew members and supplies, arrange for the ship's construction and maintenance, and assume responsibility for the welfare of everyone involved in the venture. The network of traders, craftspeople, and specialists who provide the ship's equipment and supplies represent a sophisticated economic system that spans continents. The iron for the ship's nails comes from Swedish mines, the wool for the sail from English sheep, the amber in the cargo hold from Baltic beaches. This global supply chain makes the longship voyages possible while creating economic opportunities for communities throughout the medieval world. The knowledge and skills that enable successful navigation are maintained by a community of specialists who share information and techniques across generations. Master navigators train apprentices not just in the mechanical aspects of seamanship, but in the deeper understanding of wind, water, and weather that separates competent sailors from true masters of their craft. The religious and cultural leaders who provide spiritual guidance and maintain social cohesion play essential roles in ensuring that the voyage serves not just economic but community purposes. They help crews understand their place in the larger story of their people and provide the moral framework that guides behavior during the stresses of ocean travel. As your longship finally approaches the shores of the new land, you reflect on the profound human truths revealed by this extraordinary voyage. The vessel that carried you across the Atlantic has been more than just a means of transportation. It has been a complete world that demonstrates both the potential and the limitations of human cooperation. The success of the voyage depended not on individual heroism, but on the ability of diverse people to work together toward a common goal. The ship's cramped quarters forced the crew to develop systems for managing conflict, sharing resources, and maintaining morale during extended periods of stress and uncertainty. These skills, developed in the extreme environment of ocean travel, represent fundamental insights into the nature of human community. The longship also reveals the power of accumulated knowledge and cultural memory. The vessel's design, the crew's navigational skills, and the stories that sustain them during the journey all represent the contributions of countless previous generations. This voyage is possible because people learned from experience, passed on their knowledge, and gradually built a civilization capable of crossing oceans and establishing new communities in distant lands. The economic and social networks that made the voyage possible demonstrate the interconnectedness of medieval life. The ship carries not just people and goods, but ideas, technologies, and cultural practices that will influence the development of new settlements. The crew members serve as bridges between different worlds, facilitating the exchange of knowledge and resources that enables civilization to expand and adapt. The challenges faced during the voyage, storms, disease, interpersonal conflicts, and the constant uncertainty of life at sea, reveal both human vulnerability and human resilience. The crew's ability to survive and maintain their humanity under extreme conditions speaks to the deep reserves of courage, compassion, and creativity that define our species. The longship's arrival at its destination marks not an ending but a beginning. The knowledge gained during the voyage, the relationships forged in the ship's cramped quarters, and the skills developed through months of cooperation will become the foundation for new communities. The vessel that carried them across the ocean will be joined by others, creating a network of connections that will endure for centuries. As you step onto the beach of this new land, you carry with you not just the memories of the voyage, but an understanding of what human beings can accomplish when they combine individual skills with collective purpose. The longship that brought you here represents one of history's most remarkable achievements, not just in technology or navigation, but in the more fundamental challenge of creating communities that can survive and thrive in the face of uncertainty. The story of the Viking Longship is ultimately a story about us, about the human capacity to dream of distant shores, to develop the skills and knowledge necessary to reach them, and to create communities that can flourish in new environments. Whether separated by centuries or continents, we share with these medieval voyagers the same fundamental desires for security, opportunity, and connection that drive all human exploration. The longship's legacy extends far beyond the medieval period. Its principles of flexibility, efficiency, and adaptability continue to influence modern design, while its role in enabling cultural exchange and technological development provides lessons for our own interconnected world. The vessel that carried Viking crews across the Atlantic demonstrates that human achievement is always a collective effort, built on the contributions of countless individuals working together toward shared goals. If you enjoyed this journey through history and found yourself drifting peacefully into the world of medieval seafaring, please consider subscribing to our channel. We explore the hidden stories behind history's most fascinating places, bringing you the sights, sounds, and experiences that made our ancestors human, just like us. Sweet dreams. And thank you for joining us in discovering what really happened inside Viking longships.